Welcome, everybody. That today we're talking about the sharing economy. We all know sharing is caring. It's something that we're taught as children, right? But it's also valid in business too. From the dawn of time, collaborating and sharing is how businesses work. I have one thing, you have the other. Sometimes we combine them together or we buy and trade from one another. We've always worked in this way. And in the case of our guest today, Rebecca Heaps, it was a tent. Because in the sharing economy, it's all about using that excess capacity, the things that we have all around us that aren't being utilized. And with the Tentshare story, Rebecca thought to herself, how can I bring in some extra cash? I've got a bell tent. And fast forwarding, Tentshare was born. Oh, now, obviously, there's a lot more to it. So we're going to dive into that today because the reality is we live in a full world. This idea of what's called extractive business is over. We need to be repurposing, sharing, moving the things that we have around and making money from them. And I believe it's also a way of solving one of the greater challenges we have that we don't talk about enough, which is apathy. And alongside apathy is isolation. I was listening to the news this morning, and the first headline that was on the radio is the fact that alcohol deaths in the UK are 4% higher than they were last year. And last year they were higher than they were in the times before COVID. So unsurprisingly, during COVID, people drank more and liver disease, alcohol-related deaths are up. The next headline is, the Trussell Trust have never seen so many people using food banks. This is all connected. This is all connected. And as entrepreneurs, we have an opportunity to change business as usual. And by changing business as usual, we can change life as usual. And the sharing economy is such a beautiful way of doing that, because when you're borrowing from someone, if you go and pick it up, you can have a chat. If you're sending it and it's peer-to-peer, you might have, it's part of your service design, a little note. Thanks for using this tent. Take a picture of it and send it to me. Just anything, just that community spirit. And this is what I love about it. And when I met Rebecca, I already knew about Tentshare. We were sitting next to each other on a panel at Anthropy, and we were just chatting before the panel started. And she's like, oh yeah, and I found a Tentshare. And I was like, you found a Tentshare? Because I have this thing about meeting people who are behind the products and the services that I love in real life. I fangirl. I was like, I love Tentshare. I love Tentshare. And it came from my own sort of moment of frustration. Like, why do we own a tent? We like camp twice a year. This is so stupid. But yeah, so that's the direction we're going to go in today. So Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for such a lovely welcome. I'm a fangirl of yours as well. So feelings mutual.
We love it. We love it. Fangirls together. Do you want to give us the real kind of, not the real, but how it actually went down and the idea struck you as a light bulb moment?
Yeah. So basically, I really was looking for a way to make some extra money and was hunting in my mind and hunting through my loft and my attic and my garage, something that's had value that someone else would want. And I remembered I've got this bell tent. I've used it a lot. I still camp. I still love using it. So I didn't want to sell it. So I thought maybe we can rent it out. And I had good success with that. And then I thought, I'm not a marketer. I'm not this, that, and the other. I'm doing it as a side hustle. So I want to put it on a platform so that I can reach more people. And as much as I hunted, one did not exist. And I thought, well, this is a great idea, not only for me, but for other people who have tents that they only use once or twice a year. So it literally was a light bulb moment. I sat up in bed. In fact, I was moaning about it to someone and they said to me, but stop moaning about it and create it. And I was like, I was away on holiday. I spent the rest of the holiday writing notes. It was like, I am actually just going to do this. I'm going to do it. And I spent writing notes. And the more I thought about it, the more I loved the idea. And the more I thought, I've had loads of great ideas, but not one of them has actually got to the point where I've made it happen. And I was so convinced this was such a good idea that I made it happen. Yeah.
So what did you do next?
So you need to find a platform, and there's two ways you can do this. You can design and make your own platform, or you can purchase or rent, a bit like the sharing economy, a platform. There are people that are, if you want to design and make your own software, that is going to cost you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. So you've got to be pretty committed, and you've got to have money. Neither of which, I was really committed, but I didn't have the money.
You got to know it's going to work, right? Before
exactly.
you like go all in.
Exactly that. So I went for a minimum viable platform, MVP, to prove the model. And the one I landed on was Share Tribe. And that is a 6-monthly rental. It's basically a package. You can add it onto your website, and you can do peer-to-peer sharing, which is the real key. There's the real difficulty with all the other things that are available is that you can't do it peer-to-peer. So WooCommerce doesn't allow that to happen. And so that's how I launched it. And luckily, I went to a website designer who was absolutely amazing, still does my website now. He's local to me. We've used him for years because I have another business. And he got it all together, put it all together. And for a minimal input of money, we created between us Tentshare. And that was how it began. But also,
I love that. It's so simple.
Yeah, it feels like it was simple, but it wasn't. It's really complex, but the principle of sharing is so simple. It's just put in, and the technology that we now live under, this is why Airbnb could happen. Airbnb was one of the original peer-to-peer sharing economy platforms. And they were programmers, the guys that started it. So they could write the program, and it's evolved over the years and it's become more complex. But they had that technology at their fingertips because that's what they were doing. That was their point of genius, as it were. But that was the first ever peer-to-peer sharing that we can do globally. It doesn't have to be within your local community, although it is in your local community. It can also be nationwide, and perhaps for Tentshare one day, global. And that's the only reason that has happened is because of technology right now that allows us to spread the message.
Because people have always borrowed tents from friends, right? Yes. Do you know anybody who knows anybody in Facebook groups now? We could pull that, but there's something about the convenience of it. We are all creatures of habit. And unfortunately, technology, a certain large platform named after trees, has made it that buying new is more convenient than sharing or borrowing.
Well, it goes back way further than that, because as far as I'm aware, what's happened is post-war, we needed to reignite the local economy, the UK's economy. We needed to get it going. And so the government and marketers worked really hard to make us into consumers, right? So we are so good at consuming that we've nailed it. We've smashed it. We couldn't buy more things if we wanted to. But what's happened is the economy was based on endless growth. And all of our information, everything you read about it is grow, we have to grow. Labour talks about green growth. But what it doesn't take into account, what no one realised when this was all evolving, is that our planet's resources are finite. And so what happens if you endlessly consume? What happens if you endlessly grow? Everything gets used up. Consumption means to use up until it's all gone. And we're consuming the planet right now.
Literally. literally. And where I find attention in what I've put as my personal mission and my entrepreneurial mission is to challenge this idea of endless growth, but to also challenge this idea that the green way is going to be this panacea, because the materials needed for solar panels come from somewhere. The electric cars, it comes from somewhere. And so the sharing economy, the upcycling as a skill and a business model is going to be fundamental, because the reality is, if it's illegal and or against legislation to have fossil fuel powered cars, and we don't have a viable, thriving market in electric refits, what do we do? What do we do with all of those cars? Exactly. So it's like we need to share the ones that are already on the road, because how many people don't actually need their car all the time, but they have it, or their life circumstances change. They move from the countryside to a city and they still have the car, but they don't need it all the time. And this is what I find really interesting. And now I can see the sharing economy everywhere. One of my favorites is Borrow My Driveway, right? Where you borrow the drive. And then going back to the electric car model, now imagine you put an electric charging unit on your drive. We talk about this.
There's a co-charger, a peer-to-peer sharing charging called co-charger.
There we go. Like, we solve that infrastructure. Oh, we can't possibly do X, Y, and Z because there's no infrastructure. We've got infrastructure. We're just not seeing it as infrastructure. We don't see it for what it is. Your bell tent was money. It was more than just an experience that you had and anything else that it could represent. In actual fact, as cash money.
Yeah. And last year, guess what? I made almost £2,000 by renting out my bell tent on Tentshare.
How much would it cost? Like, you would make £0 if it just sat in your garage like mine is.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm about to put it up there. So I'm like, I got a family packing unit for 4. It's glamorous. It's amazing. We got chairs. Like,
yeah, exactly. You can rent all that out to someone in your local community. They can enjoy it. They don't have to store it. They don't have to maintain it. They get it for affordable cost. They use it. They bring it back. It's ready for someone else to use.
Exactly. And it just makes so much sense. Now, when we look at it as a business model, right, you've got that challenge of supply and demand. And when you're starting, you have to get the balance right. So how did you do that when I've got the right amount of tents and the right amount of people, but moving the levers at the same time?
Yeah. So that is one of the biggest challenge of the peer-to-peer, because my stock is only the people that will list a tent. Okay. And like over 1 million tents are purchased each year. There are millions and millions of tents available. But out of that, research says about 1 to 2% of people will share their tent. But that's enough, right? That would make a huge impact, right? If we say there's, I don't know, 5 million tents or even more, 1% of that is enough. So the idea is to get as many people as possible to list their tents. And that's the challenge. That's the biggest challenge for me. Other peer-to-peer sharing economy models have another challenge, like a fashion one. Everyone puts their items up to rent, but the challenge for them is to get people to rent the items. Like, I have people who want to rent tents, and the challenge for me is to get tents on there. I solved that just recently, you'll be pleased to hear, Liana, by working closely with a British tent manufacturer, Altpro, and they have listed their tents on the Tentshare platform. So now anyone in the nation can rent a tent through Tentshare and get it delivered to them anywhere in the UK. And so
that's so cool.
My challenge, the challenge that has been something I've been working on, it's growing. People are listing their tents. We've got over 500 listings now, or coming up to 500. And so people are listing, but my challenge was to get nationwide access and affordable nationwide access for everyone, so we can all access nature. And Old Pro have stepped in. They are really sustainably minded. They're working towards their sustainability goals. They're all over it. They're brilliant, and have stepped up and nailed that supply for me.
And it makes sense for them. Why? Because we know that limitless growth isn't a reality. So for their own business resilience, they have to think of a new business model. If they have all these tents, in a world where they can't make money selling tents to individuals singularly, they have to think differently. They have to.
Guess what? They rent it out. I don't know what the figures are, but they would rent it out 5 or 6 times. And that would cover the cost of manufacturing the tent. Then they rent it out 10 times. That's all profit.
Right.
And you can keep it going in a tent going in circulation. They don't biodegrade. They don't compost down. We repair, we fix, we clean, we learn how to look after the stuff we already own. And that's a whole new skill base. People are saying, what are the manufacturers going to do when they can't manufacture tents? Well, maybe they would turn into fixers and menders and repairers and cleaners and solution providers.
And this is what I want to talk to you about, is it's what I call it, a tent academy, because I love this. I love this side of your business model. I love this side of it. So can you talk to us about the learning how to repair tents and tent maintenance?
Yeah. So I work also with Camplight. Now, Camplight is a cooperative, a newly formed cooperative, but what they've been doing in festivals, because we've all heard of the festival waste, what they have been doing is salvaging tents that have been left behind. They have been cleaning them and repairing them and making them good, and then re-renting them back to festival goers, ready, pre-pitched for when they arrived, affordably. So not those which are great, that you get those great big glamping tents which are canvas and beautiful, and it's a real amazing experience. Some people just want to sleep, right? Some people just want to get into their tent, go to sleep, or not, or just have somewhere to put their sleeping bag to look at. So some people, and people don't want to carry it all. So what we do is we pitch the tent ready for them. This is Camplight. We pitch the tent ready for them. They arrive, which means they can travel lighter, which means they can catch the train, which reduces their travel emissions for that festival. They arrive, it's affordable, it costs less than a new tent, and you're increasing the carbon efficiency of each tent every time you use it. So,
and you don't have all those tents left on site, which is just ridiculous.
And we don't exactly, we reduce the tent waste. 250,000 tents go into landfill each year, Iana.
It's like, tell me we're privileged without telling me we're privileged.
Yeah. I'm going to buy a tent for £100. I'm going to take it. Can I tell you the life story of a tent, and then we'll get on to repair?
Yeah,
Let me
I want to hear this.
Okay, so a tent is of a festival tent, i.e. single use. A tent is manufactured somewhere, probably Vietnam, Asia, somewhere around there. It's shipped, and that costs carbon, right? And energy, and probably labor.
Let's talk about climate justice, right? That's a whole other conversation we unpack. Yeah. How the tent is born.
Yeah. So let's just put that aside. It's shipped all the way over to the UK, and then it's shipped all the way to a warehouse or a shop. And then someone drives to the shop or gets it delivered to their home, right? They then drive home. They then drive to the festival. They pitch their tent. They don't even sleep in it because they're so messy they can't find it, right? They get to the end of the festival. They go home. They leave the tent there. Then that tent gets bulldozed up, sent to landfill. And guess where that landfill goes?
It goes back to where the tent is made.
Check out that privilege of this country. Check out that privilege.
And people don't realize, like, when people are like, oh, my product is sustainable because it's recyclable. I'm like, do you even know what recycling
Even
actually is. It's
thought
like an
about that.
abattoir for sustainability or something. You know what I mean? To even know what recycling really looks like.
So what we do at Camplight, let's talk about keeping that tent out of landfill. That's the game we're playing. Let's keep as much as we can out of landfill. So what we do is Camplight, we train up crew because we need people to help us pitch. We pitch 60 tents, 150 tents. We have a lot of crew. And what we do is we look at the tent and we learn how to maintain it. We learn how to clean it. We learn how to repair it. And then they get a certificate at the end of this, and they are fully qualified tent mechanics. So I've trained a number of people over the weekend, young people, older people. All of these people get to go to the festival. They have to work pre, they have to work after, they have to pre-pitch, then they get most of the festival off, and then they have to clean up afterwards. And they get a ticket to the festival and access to the festival. Yeah, so that's, and we pay them because it's a cooperative, we pay them also. So we had a number of people come, and I delivered a tent training last Saturday, and I taught them how to fix a pole, how to mend a rip or a tear, how to mend a zip, and that's basically all you need to do. How to pitch a tent, how to strike a tent, how to clean a tent, how to look after a tent, right? And this has been Kieran, who is the king of Camplight. He invented it. He has, over the last 10 years, found the best way to fix, repair, clean a tent. So what he says goes.
Right. So then this is, and so that takes sharing to a whole new level, because now we're sharing knowledge. We are supporting the local economy. We're creating jobs. Because I tell you what, it's going to be a long time before ChatGPT can refix a tear. And that can be applied in so many other areas.
Yeah, so
right?
I go to the local repair cafe, I work at the local, volunteer at the local repair cafe, and people bring me their bags and I fix the zips on their bags and any holes and stuff. So that kind of knowledge can be applied. And then the girl that came, the young woman who came on Saturday was like, oh, I've got loads of broken zips at home on my trousers. I was just about to throw them away. I'm not going to throw them away now. And the young men who came, we have to do a thing at the end, the mission. They have to tell us at the end what our mission is. And they are all like, oh yeah, it's to reduce tent waste, isn't it? It's like, yes, it is. Oh yeah, it's to increase carbon efficiency, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, go boys, go women. And they're young, they're Gen Z, they get it straight away. They're so impressed. They're like, oh my God, I never thought of this. I hadn't thought that we could do such a thing. I'm never going to leave my tent again.
Yes, yes. And you mentioned Gen Z because they are the leaders in this new era of the sharing economy. So there was recent research that came out from Wunderman Thompson. They do research like in the advertising and brand space. And during the second half of the last decade, sharing economy boomed from like folks like you and I, everything from Airbnb to Zipcar, which was like one of the pioneers in that. And even in its most crude, when folks are sharing their Netflix logins, right? That's a whole thing. Like one Netflix login for everybody, right? That's sharing. And Gen Z are now really into this idea, right? Of if you've got clothes rental, you've got car rental, you've got all of these different things, because they're a generation of people that I wouldn't even say, unfortunately, I guess life changes, who won't have this life that people our age and the boomers were sold, which is you buy a house and you have all of this space to put your stuff and like this, I guess, success through ownership. That's something that's not going to be in their reality because financially, wealth inequality is higher than it has ever been. Flipping it on its head, from a planetary perspective, we can't live like that anymore anyways. So there's this element of they have got to evolve with the times, and they are.
Yeah, some of them are. And they only need a small nudge. And that was the thing I was amazed about on Saturday, is that they came, they had no idea what they were going to do. They didn't really know why they were doing. Well, they wanted to go to the festivals. So they have to complete this training. So I've got a captive audience.
The perfect carrot. It's the perfect carrot, because festival tickets are expensive.
Yeah. And a lot of them sell out. So they're a captive audience. But what I found most interesting was that the younger they were, the quicker they were to understand what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I spent a lot of time chatting about the carbon efficiencies, reducing waste. And it's a language they're already in, I think. That's what I kind of gained from. That was the insight I gained from that. You only have to flip a switch. The switch is there. That's my hopeful understanding.
Right. Now, something else that you're doing, which again, I love, and it makes so much sense. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, you're building this for someone like me because it's not, I hate to say it, but I don't, because I'm honest. It's the thing that I hate the most about tents is putting them up and taking them down. That's why I would never get a glamping tent, because they're huge.
But the bell tent is the easiest tent to put up in the world. It's true. That's why I bought it, because I can do it on my own. Don't need anyone's help.
But you're expanding the model whereby you can hire tents at festivals this year, which makes all the sense. Can you talk to me about that? Because I'm like, yeah, no brainer.
Yeah, so Camplight offer that service and they'll pre-pitch them for you. But Tentshare is also, we're just beginning. So once Camplight succeeds and there is no more tent waste, that kind of business model falls down, because we can't salvage any more tents to replace the ones that reach the end of life. You know, that's hopefully not too far in the distant future, but you never know. But what Tentshare is now doing is offering people who live close to where the festivals are the opportunity to put their tents onto the Tentshare platform and rent them to festival goers. So festival goers can now, what happens with festivals is often, not always, but often they're quite insular things. So the festival organisers want all the money to be spent within the festival, and the local residents get nothing really out of it apart from extra traffic, noise, rubbish, probably waste, and such. So what Tentshare is offering is the local residents a way to make some money from the festival being there. So they drop the festival off, or the festival goer picks up the tent, or the tent gets dropped off. You negotiate between yourselves. You have the tent there at your festival, and then you drop it off. So again, you can travel light. So we're just trialing that. I trialed it last year. I'm trialing it. I'm expanding it this year. We've got 3 festivals carefully chosen who are agreeing to it this year. And yeah, I'm really excited, because this is, again, another like game changer in the festival world. You getting local residents to be able to have a positive impact from the festival. And
yes. And all of a sudden my mind goes to things like it's Airbnb for tents. And so imagine you're a digital nomad and you're originally from Portugal and you're living in the UK nomadically, and you want to go to a festival, but you've never been maybe to Henley. And so you don't know anything about it. And then you're renting, you ask your tent sharer, oh, where's good to eat? Where's good to do this?
Exactly.
Where's good to do that? You know, and it goes back to that community.
Yeah.
What's
the public transport links like?
Yeah.
Yeah. And guess what? It doesn't have to be just tents and festivals. This is a big vision. Guess what? You can never get a taxi to and from the train station. So guess what? Maybe you'd set up a little car sharing. So the local residents offer lifts for a small fee. Maybe you could set up a drive sharing. So you're driving here, you've made the carbon terrible choice of driving to the festival, but you've decided to do that. Maybe you filled up your car with lots of people, so that decreases your carbon efficiency, but you need somewhere to park it. So maybe people can offer their driveways. You know, it doesn't have to stop at tents. It could be huge. And skills, the skills of the local residents sharing, cooking and providing services.
Yes,
You know?
I'm even thinking things like, oh no, when I packed, the weather was one thing and now it's not. Borrow my wellies.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I have a raincoat.
Yes.
You know, you're in a festival, you cannot access anything, or unless you buy like a £10 rain mat that's worth £1.50 and it's been shipped over from, like we were saying about then, someone has a stock of raincoats. You pay,
and that
like,
becomes a whole business model. What are you in the business in? I'm in the business of renting raincoats at Glastonbury.
And I send them off to get fixed and cleaned every year after season. I send them off to get fixed and cleaned by someone who fixes and cleans them. And they get
right. And then think about what that does for British manufacturing. Something that I hear when I was looking to buy wellies years ago, I was going onto all of these forums and people were saying there was a certain brand that used to be so high quality. Then they became fashionable, offshored production, and now they're leaky. And they're like, don't buy those because they're leaky.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, guess what? If you were renting out your wellies, would you buy a cheap pair from a cheap manufacturer that you know is going to leak after 10 minutes? Or would you upgrade your purchase? And you can apply this to tents, to cars, to everything. You upgrade your purchase to buy high quality, long lasting item, knowing you're going to be able to get that money back.
And you rent it, because there are like wellies out there that are 300-400 pounds. And according to reviews, they are really sturdy. They are high quality.
Yeah.
But if you know that you maybe only wear wellies once a year, you can't justify that. But when you wear them, it's at a festival or I don't know, whatever it is. But the reality, it just changes our economic dynamics. And I believe it actually gives us more control and power over our own destiny.
Yes. The question is, because it brings regeneration and distribution more equally shared.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the problem lies, is that the big corps have to feed their big growing profits, and they're going to hate that. More distributive, more equitable sharing of our wealth, more community.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone borrows a tent, if someone rents a tent from someone in my local community, the wealth gets swapped between us. It won't go anywhere else. If you go and buy a tent from a big corp, from a big shop, or get it delivered from the tree place, your money is going up. Who knows where?
Now, this is a very interesting sort of segue, which is that's how Airbnb started. Then the sharing model of Airbnb got so popular, land speculators came in, and then they started buying up the properties to rent on Airbnb, and then local property prices went up. How have you started thinking about how you're going to prevent that with tents?
Yes. The Office of National Statistics, is having trouble defining the sharing economy, in particular the peer-to-peer sharing economy. They find it very difficult, and they need to obviously define it so that they can tax us. Right? That's basically the reason they need to define it, so they can get some money off us. So I quite like this little moment where everyone's struggling to define it. But the ONS just recently took Airbnb out of the sharing economy because the balance is tipped from utilising assets we already own to actually purchasing assets with the view to making money on the Airbnb platform. And so Airbnb is no longer recognised by the ONS as a sharing economy platform. Now,
I like that.
I know. I like it too.
It's like, don't you try it.
So what I have to do, because Tentshare is based on 4 principles: like truth, equality, peace, and sustainability, right? That is embedded in the very beginning of Tentshare when I first began it. Because I used to go, I used to work within, not work, I used to go to the Quakers, which is a religious group. They believe in peace, equality, simplicity, and truth, right? And I love those principles. I'm not a Quaker, but I love those principles.
Mm.
I argue with that. And so those principles are embedded into Tentshare, which means we're looking at thriving, not growing. Which means when it comes that I have so many people renting tents in the whole country and globally, I need to find a way to stop it becoming an Airbnb type model. It has to stay a peer-to-peer sharing economy model. And that is my commitment to this. So how I do that is something I'm still thinking about. Maybe limiting how many tents can get rented out by one person. I don't know, because I don't want to limit people, but then I don't want to change that economy from a thriving economy to a growing economy. And I liken it, I'm still working on the analogy. So an apple tree, right? Think of a business as an apple tree. You plant your apple tree, you grow your apple tree, you nurture it, you look after it, it produces fruit. Now, there's what you do with that fruit. You can give it away, you can sell it, you can grow more and sell more. But what I think is the best thing to do is to nurture. You could just grow millions and millions of trees and make millions and millions of pounds by selling them to million people. But what happens then is that people only want the best apples, a lot of waste, the trees become less gorgeous and the apples have less. Anyway, what I think we should do is sell the apples off the tree so that they can grow their own tree, and then nurture that tree that you have. So it grows more apples every year, it grows better quality apples, it becomes the best apple tree in the whole of the Southeast or whatever. That's how I see business changing. Instead of growing apple farms, you grow one beautiful, or maybe two or three if you want it, beautiful apple trees. Does that make sense? Is that a good analogy?
Oh, that makes 100% sense. And there's so much in it. And I'm going to go to your Airbnb point after we go here, which is you end up with a service design. So in the first instance, the business is to grow the tree. Then once you're in the business of growing the tree and selling the apples, you can then teach people who want to grow their own apple trees how to do that for themselves. And you can create a community of apple tree growers where they pay you as the original apple treeist to bring other apple treers together. Their money is not evil.
No, you need the money.
It's energy. Money is energy. Have a business for longer than 5 years and you will learn that money is energy, because cash flow is real, and cash flow washes through like energy to allow you to continue going. It's fuel. What the problem is, and this brings me into the Airbnb, is that people are envious. All of us, even if it's like a little bit, we are envious people. And unfortunately, in the Western economy, and I would say really around the world, let's be real, for whatever reason, those with a lot of envy manage to concentrate a lot of power and influence. And so now they're all just envious of each other, and they're spreading that envy around and making everybody else envious of each other. Because then this morning on the news, the third story was all about the small boats, quote unquote. I'm like, how does no one see how all of this stuff is connected? It's connected. Right?
It's so connected.
All connected. And so the way that you're talking about Tentshare, my belief is that Airbnb could have gone a different way. when they accepted venture money, they got onto a whole new train. And that's why as founders, our values are so key. If I think about Inspiration Space, we started as a networking group. And I believe in building relationships. I'm not a transactional person. I used to hate going to traditional networking groups and someone, you know this, right? Someone just comes up and they hand you a business card. They don't tell you anything. And then you're like, what am I even supposed to do with this? What am I even supposed to do with this? Or you're talking to someone and you can tell that like you have no value to them. So they literally walk away while you're talking to them.
Oh yeah, I've had that.
Right. You're like, okay, that's awkward.
So someone weird. Chasing, and then when they get to talk to you and they realize you have no value to them, you don't see them again.
That's weird. And originally that was part of the problem I wanted to solve. Let's just build relationships. Let's have fun stuff. Let's learn. I'm an introvert and I'm socially awkward. So I need to have a different kind of a networking experience to network, because the traditional events made me even more awkward.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's not going to work. And because I needed to design a business that I felt comfortable in over the last few years. And I remember there was a point where people would always ask me, how do you stop it from being a transactional kind of a place? And I was like, those people don't even come here.
No, they're not interested.
And now they don't. No, exactly. It's not a match. So I'm like, I actually don't, that's not a problem I have. They are like people that are looking for that transactional, I just want to post my stuff and not contribute or do anything other than talk about myself. They don't even come to Inspiration Space. Right. Yeah. And that's because as the founder, I had to design something that worked for me and my values. And when you sell out and you're saying, I'm swapping my values for your money, all of a sudden you don't have any control over the direction of your business. And this is why I challenge people, in particular women, with all of this. I need to go raise money. Do you? For what? From whom? For why? Because you're giving away more than you realize. And I'm pretty sure you started your business to burn the system down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking about it. Everyone's like, right, next step is to raise loads of money. I'm like, okay, let's start thinking about it. And then I was like, why am I doing that? I want it to grow. I want it to attract the right people. I want it to make a difference. I know it's highfalutin. It's like
it's not
brand plan.
And I believe that this is possible because, as a business strategist, more often than not, especially when the business isn't growing, it's because the marketing's not as amplified as it could be, or there's a hole somewhere in the conversion process. There's one partner we collaborate with, and on the page, basically, there was a button missing on the login page, and his problem was retention on the app. And I said, I use it. And it was only we were in conversation and we were looking at it. And I was like, I've been meaning to say this to you. Because the login button is way at the bottom, but the page shares information for registration, I always forget. I wonder if people are like me and not working so hard to scroll to the bottom. What would happen if you just move the login button to the top?
Yeah. And that makes a massive difference.
You don't need venture money to move the button from the bottom to the top.
Yeah. And that's the issue with a minimum viable platform, is that there are glitches, so that's a balance as well. It's an off-the-shelf platform and I've plugged it in. And of course, there are things that I really want to do that are very specific to Tentshare, that I understand about Tentshare. But that is something for the future. We have to prove it, we have to make it work, and then work that into the future. It's part of the plan.
Exactly. We have an incubator and a pre-accelerator called New Beginnings. And then once you go through New Beginnings and you have your minimum viable product, we validated the business model, we found those first customers, and we've really ensured that It's the business is solving a problem that you personally want to solve and that the market wants you to solve.
Yeah.
That next part is building, which is getting a repeatable sales and marketing process, because you actually can't go any further than that until you iron out some of the glitches and just do that. And then you can take it to the next level. And something that I really like is this idea of customer funded innovation. Things like FedEx. FedEx became FedEx because they had the scanning technology and the US Postal Service needed things tracked. So FedEx said, hey, use our technology. You don't need to pay us anything because we need to test this at scale. And that was how they grew. If you look at GPS, GPS was a government funded innovation. A plane almost crashed and they're like, oh, maybe we should put this in the hands of more people. Think about how many billions have been built off the back of GPS.
Yeah.
As technology. So there's just, we have to share. We have to share our problems with other founders, with other stakeholders, organizations, because they may have the key and they need you. So, that's amazing because we have this thing that we've spent all this money on and we can't figure it out. It's like Post-its. Apparently the glue for Post-its was an accident. There are so many innovations happening on this grander scale.
And that's what I've discovered. I'm in a couple of networks, a Better Business Network, and it's a sustainability. I've got a lovely sustainability network, and oftentimes, and a brilliant business coach, actually, Janine Barron. And oftentimes when I put a query out to people, a solution arrives. And it's having that confidence to show your vulnerability, I think. Because nothing's perfect in business, right? Nothing is perfect. And we just have to show our vulnerability. People understand, the right people understand that. And I can never feel ashamed or embarrassed about what I'm doing because my values are deeply embedded.
All of this. Some of the founders that I admire the most are the ones who have built by being vulnerable. They build out in the open. It's so true. And my business partner, he always says, engagement brings good outcomes. And that engagement is talking to your clients and telling them about what you're doing in the business. Talking to your, the people that you do business with B2B. So your suppliers, about what you're doing, or asking, hey, we've got this thing going on. If you know anyone who this might resonate with, just take a look at that and pass it on. What's so important. And I think when you're building that confidence that you need as an entrepreneur to really stand up on the stage, our passion gets us really far. The imposter syndrome does still come in, right?
Yeah.
And with my ADHD, I've got part of that is, it's called rejection sensitivity. You stay up at 3 a.m. thinking about a conversation you had 15 years ago. Why did I say that?
Why did they say that? Why did I say that?
Right. And in business, something that I say, I don't get it right all the time. Obviously, no one does. But I always go back to, but you know what? I lead with integrity. I don't always get it right, but I'm doing this for all the right reasons. And no one's ever going to be able to cancel me on that. Execution, no, I'm learning to do that better. I always say execution can be taught or bought. Integrity, though, that's different.
Yeah, 100%. Look at all the successful business leaders. If you look at all the successful business leaders, if you read about them, you will see that they have failed a million times. And we all know this, but it's like the big secret that no one's willing to talk about.
To be qualified, we use the foundation. We use the principles of effectual entrepreneurship, which is studies, academic research done by Siri Srivastava 10 years ago. And she took the same methodology that people use to qualify experts in, say, chess, and applied it to entrepreneurship. And to be able to do that, you had to have started a business from nothing and brought it public like more than twice. And you had to have failed several times. And so in the end, only 200 entrepreneurs even fit that. And I love the fact that to be an expert, you had to have had a lot of failures under your belt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you only know the smooth road, or if you're a pilot, you only know how to fly in good conditions, you don't know how to navigate the plane through turbulence.
Exactly. Every mistake, I think it's Quakers that believe this, I think it is, every mistake brings you closer to the truth.
Yes.
I love that. It's like a mantra.
Yes.
Throughout the day.
Yes. Yes.
Bringing me closer, because every time I make a mistake, you learn from it, you think about it, you assess it, you evaluate it, and you find another way. So you had to make that mistake to get to that point.
And it reveals a lot about you as the founder. When I was talking to Carlos Saba and Lawrence McCahill from Happy Startup School last week, they've been in business 10 years. And they're another one where I met them out in the wild. And I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. This is amazing. Right. Always. When I meet my heroes. Right. I meet my heroes. And,
yeah, same. I have a stock of them.
and Carlos, exactly. And Carlos said, if I could do anything differently, I would have gone into therapy earlier. And I'm like, that's so true. You learn so much about yourself. Every mistake gets you closer to the truth, because you start to learn how your ego works.
Yeah.
There's so many things. Like, the biggest mistakes I've ever made in business have always been driven by ego. I've done events that have crashed and burned. Why? Because the motivation was ego or envy.
Yeah. Chasing the shiny prize. I learned that one.
Exactly. Trying to get the name in lights because my ego is telling me that I'm doing this better or I'm smarter than someone else. You know what I mean? Just like shitty behavior, basically. And I'm like,
no, I hear you totally.
So I got humbled. I was like, I'm humble. I'm humble.
I used to be a primary school teacher, right? That's how I started. And every lesson that you do, you have to evaluate. You have to think, how can I do it better? How can I do this better? How can I serve the children better? How can I make this a better experience for them? And everything you roll out to them is a massive evaluation. So I think that has been a good training for thinking about business as well. Going from a non-business background, you apply all you've learned into a business model. So yeah.
I love that. So I'm going to bring us into a close, which is, when you look back the Tentshare journey thus far, what's one thing that you wish you would have known then that you learned through what I call burnt fingers learning, where you look at the scars and you're like, yep, reminder.
Okay. The biggest thing about the peer-to-peer sharing economy business model is that it takes a long time. So if you are thinking of starting a sharing economy business model, know that it's a slow grow, but it's a deep and strong grow. Yeah. Hang on in there. Hang on in there. It takes a while for the rest of the world to catch up, but eventually you're going to be onto a winner. If you've embedded all of the things. But yeah, know and have patience. Stay strong, have patience.
Yes. And this is actually something that Robin Chase, the founder of Zipcar, says. A successful sharing platform has to be rolled out gradually, because you have to avoid these pitfalls. You got to react to like harmful trends. You've got so much going on. So you really do need to know that going forward. This is not some quick win. You're doing this to be of service, and you'll get your payoff over time.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a brilliant book called The Lean Marketplace. That is basically like the Bible, how to start up a sharing economy business. So read that. That's brilliant. That's the first thing I did, actually. When we went back to my starter story, I actually read that first and then went to the website designer.
It's called The Lean Marketplace.
Called The Lean Marketplace.
Love it.
Yeah, the lean marketplace. Juno Macron and Christabel Gracia. I haven't said those right at all.
They're not on the call with us, so we couldn't ask them how to say it correctly. That is amazing. And for folks like me who have decided to pick up some extra cash this summer and want to rent all of our tents and all of our camping stuff, I'm literally going to do this. Ours is all nicely packaged. I'm going to be like the tent baron. You better watch me. Like,
I love that.
Literally, it's all like beautiful because my husband's he doesn't have OCD, but he likes things in order. So all of our stuff is like perfectly designed to fit in like an overhead thing for a Skoda, like all of it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to kill it on Tentshare this summer.
That is information. That is the sharing of information that you have spent years, and your husband has spent years making that work. You need to share that information.
I don't know how he did it. Every time we fold up the tent, it's like we've never done it before. We're like, how come it's not fitting back in the bag? Like every single time, like we've never done this before.
You need to come on a tent mechanics course.
Facts. So for folks like me who are about to make a killing this summer, hiring our tents, what's the best way to do that?
So you go to the Tentshare website, tentshare.co.uk. You click on list your tent, and then you upload some photographs and it takes a couple of minutes to list your tent. So use a photo. If you don't have a photograph, use the photograph you've already got for now. And then when you pitch your tent and check your tent, then take a photograph and upload that one. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can already see. Oh my gosh. Don't let me anywhere near it. Otherwise I might Airbnb this, because like I can see so many things now.
Also, you're creating
partnerships with Patagonia and this and that.
You're creating, by sharing your tent, you're creating affordable access to people who need to get into nature. Yeah, not everyone can buy a tent, not everyone can afford a tent. So those people who would like to go camping, who would like to try camping, rent a tent from someone in your local community. Stick it up for a weekend. Stick it up in your back garden. See if you like it. Try it out. Test it. Take it back.
Oh man. Okay. So this is just one more thing I got to end with, because this has inspired so many thoughts. I might have to do some Instagram, like free ideas, because I got loads of them now. Yay. If I was in the travel industry and I had an independent travel consultancy, I would get all over this. Why? Because travel as we know it is not going to be the same. And as that shift starts to happen alongside the cost of living crisis, it's going to be seen as tacky to go to the Maldives.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you know what I mean?
It's happening. It's already happening.
Exactly. Like we're like, oh,
really?
Yeah, you're the Maldives. We don't do that anymore. You know what I mean?
Like, how beautiful Cornwall is.
Right. So the ability to connect people to tent. So like oh my God, Tentshare curation. I am a Tentshare curator. I find the best tents on Tentshare, curate them for you, and give you guides to Cornwall, the Lake District, blah, blah. That's a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody who's listening to this, just give me credit. You can have it. Because that's a business.
Anyone who's listening to this, get in contact.
Because this is what I love about this era of entrepreneurship and business that we're in. We can use our creativity to find new ways of making a living that align with our values, our wants, our desires, our frustrations, changing economic models, all at the same time.
Yeah. I love the peer-to-peer sharing economy. I am absolutely so passionate about it. And it takes into account the planet, the people, and then the profit.
Yes. The profit is the outcome of the science experiment, is what I say. That's a sign that your marketing experiments are working, the profit. You're doing the science part right.
Yeah.
It can't be all science. You got to have, there's got to be more to it. You need the money. Of course you do. That's how the business becomes sustainable. It's a renewable energy source. But if you only focus on that, you miss out on the thing that's going to make your business a legacy, even if in your own eyes.
Legacy is the key there. Absolutely.
I love it.
Children?
So thank you so much for joining us. This is a thrilling conversation. We need to have another one because I'm like, oh my God, I got a million ideas. Like so many ideas. I can see it now. So yes, we are with Natalie Binns, and we are talking about doing entrepreneurship in style. So this is the story of how Natalie left her job in fast fashion and fashion in general to become a sustainable fashion consultant, champion, and mentor for startups.